For the longest time, pack-in games were a staple alongside home consoles as a taster of what the system could offer. The best of these games went on to define their respective systems and elevate them to new heights, such as Mario/Duck Hunt on the NES, Sonic on the Genesis after 1991, the Wii and Wii Sports, and Web Browser 2.0 for the Dreamcast. Oh, they stopped making consoles after that. However, the game that popularized the pack-in format was Combat on the Atari VCS all the way back in 1977, which seems a bit odd given its divisive reputation today. At launch, the VCS came with two controllers, one of the longest power cables I've ever seen, and one cartridge for Combat. I can already feel the future of entertainment at my fingertips. Let me get one thing straight. I don't think Combat is a bad game, if you have a second player. The premise of Combat is simple. Two players go up against each other in a variety of different scenarios and gain points by shooting at each other within the time limit. Whoever has the most points after just over 2 minutes wins. The two-player format wasn't initially a problem, as many of the people who bought the 2600 back in the day did so for their kids, and so naturally there was no shortage of second players around. However, nowadays if you go up to someone and ask, "Hello, would you like to play Atari today?" As a result of this, the majority of people's experience with Combat nowadays is limited to only one player, which is a problem given that the game requires a second player to be properly played. It's a shame, as I was really looking forward to all 27 games here. You see, back in the Atari days, different game modes and levels were often branded as entirely new games. In actuality, it's probably more accurate to say that Combat has 5 different game modes, which in turn include 4 to 7 stages each. Select the game modes by hitting the game select switch until the number on the top of the screen corresponds to that of the game you want to play, then hit game reset to confirm. Tank is first, and it's a pretty vanilla experience. The controls are simple too, push up to go forwards, sideways to steer, and button fires. However, an interesting thing about the controls here is that you can control the trajectory of your projectile by steering your tank. Next up is Tank Pong, and it's an interesting take on the formula of Tank. Instead of being able to control the trajectory of your bullets, they now ricochet off walls similar to Pong, and your shots have to first bounce off at least one surface before hitting your opponent, otherwise they won't count. The difficulty switches control the range of each player's bullets in every game here, which is especially crucial in this game mode, as the intensity is ramped up to the maximum with shots bouncing everywhere. Overall, this is my favorite way to play Combat, even though there's only 4 levels. Next up is Invisible Tank. The levels consist of a mix of Tank and Tank Pong gameplay, but with a twist, you're invisible. Shoot to reveal your position and find out where you are. I don't like it. However, that's all the tank-related games here, as next up is Biplane. The controls here are completely different to that of the tank games, as you push up and down to dive and climb, while right and left speed up and slow down respectively, all while consistently moving. I know they wanted to make it feel at least somewhat different, but these controls tend to get confusing half the time, especially after getting used to those of Tank. The levels in Biplane don't feature any obstacles, but instead different assortments of planes. Game 19 has squadrons of 2 on either side, while Game 20 sees Player 1 control a large aircraft against Player 2's squadron. Biplane doesn't really feel like my sort of thing, but who knows? I might see it in an entirely different light if I had a second player to enjoy it with. The final game here is Jet Fighter, and it should be good seeing as how it has the most levels of any game mode here. The controls might once again seem completely new, but they're basically the same as biplanes, just rotated 90 degrees. On second thought, you could also make the argument that they're the same as tanks, except that you're moving all the time. The levels here are once again devoid of obstacles, similar to Biplane, as well as featuring the exact same variety as those of Biplane, with different speeds and different squadron sizes. That's Combat. It's an interesting 2-player experience, but nowadays you should probably steer clear if you aren't able to convince anybody to play it with you. However, Combat wasn't the only pack-in title included with the Atari VCS. In 1982, The system had hit its zenith as it continued to define gaming and top sales charts despite increasingly outdated hardware, in no small part due to a massive marketing campaign, as well as ports of nearly every arcade game at the time being released onto it at such a rate that outweighed their sometimes questionable quality. In preparation for the holiday season that year, one of these arcade ports would accompany a rebrand to the Atari 2600 moniker. I still don't see why I would need a butt sling for Web Browser 2.0.